Winter is coming to Rocan Motor Company. It's not even December, and it's already 41 degrees in the shop. With the heater close by, I set myself up to get all of these outlets mounted on the faceplates. Perhaps 220 volt convenience outlets every 6 feet is overkill. Then again, I do have a lot of machines to plug in, and after spending all year tripping on extension cords, I would rather not see one in my shop. Despite my friends knowing me as a master of screwing, there comes a point where a man can screw no more. Like many men before me, I turned to electronics to help me get the job done. After decades of twisting my wrist, perhaps this power was too great for me. Undeterred, I tried again. A little more slowly this time. Better, but surely I can screw with a little more finesse. There we go. As soon as I mastered the technique, I realized this screwdriver has a clutch. All of that effort, all of that learning, for nothing. And there I stood, screwing in outlets to faceplates for a couple hours, wondering if this investment was all worth it. I could stop, sell everything, buy a GR Corolla, and perhaps just be happy for a little bit. But like all of the days before, something kept me screwing. Perhaps it's the voices of my ancestors shouting built, not bought, as if trying to coax my ego into a higher moral ground. My power would be connected in just 2 weeks' time, and I worked faster than ever, trying to get things done before I can finally flip on that main breaker and see my lights light up, untethered by an extension cord. My pace slowed, and it began to grow chilly as I finished this task. It was clear to me now what I had to do next. I considered a few different heat sources for my shop before ultimately landing at electric heat. Cost and convenience were my primary considerations. A wood stove would have been cheapest, but far from convenient. A lot of my equipment is sensitive to large changes in temperature, so I needed something with a thermostat that I could set and forget. This left me with two choices: propane or electric heat. My house runs on propane, but running a line and getting a larger tank would have been out of the question, especially in such a short time frame. On top of it, propane has only gone up in cost, and electric has become a much more desirable option in recent years. Once I identified these Vevor 7500 watt heaters, the choice was easy. I figured 2 of these would be more than sufficient for my shop, and the ease of setting them up and getting them running made it a clear choice for me. These heaters come in many flavors from different vendors all over China, and they're all pretty similar. The instruction manual has some good information on installation, mounting, minimum clearance to any obstacles that could potentially catch fire, that sort of a thing. The bracketry conveniently allows you to mount on either a wall or a ceiling, simply by changing the position of these thumb screws. This heater must have been dropped in transport. No big deal, not worth returning at this point. Mounting the unit would be simple enough using the provided hardware. 3 heavy-duty wood lags, easy enough to pre-drill and screw into place. Once more, the world's tallest step ladder is called into action. The time spent shuffling this thing around my shop is worth it considering the time I save whenever I'm up on top screwing things into my ceiling. Or maybe I've just become weary of ladders as I've advanced in age.
Now, I've thought long and hard about where I want to put this heater, and quite frankly, I don't have too many good places. I don't want it anywhere that it's gonna, blow on a car if I have a car up on the lift and the heat on. And I also want to get one in this corner and one in the far corner of the shop so that we have pretty nice consistent heat in here. Since I have lights staggering every other truss, or I will once I'm done wiring all of the lights. I decided to put it on the second truss from the wall, probably like 2 or 3 feet off the wall, and then I can point it this way and I'll have the other one pointing the other way. That should get some good circulation going in here. There's roughly 4 feet. We'll mark a line, mount our bracket here, and then hang the heater. Now that we've got our heater mounted, we're gonna go ahead and run our wire, probably just on top of this truss, over, down to our panel in the corner there. As far as connecting to the unit, there's a port here. You can see this got bent in shipping. I'll just bend that straight. One screw here to access this panel, and then connections are tied inside there. This is a 7,500 watt heater. Clearly says right here we need minimum 8 gauge. And I got 8.2 Romex with ground. Don't mind the lack of a grommet here. I need to pick up some grommets. I just want to get these circuits ran for the time being. Oh, make sure I have this fed down enough in here to reach a ground bar. I'm actually going to use one of these circuits here, but I like to give myself a little bit extra. I like to get a couple of staples in on this side, kind of route things over this way, and then once I get up there, I'll go and clip this end, which will allow me to straighten the rest of that cable and make things a little bit easier. Just using some of these NM staples. They're insulated. Now, the real star of this show is this palm nailer. This thing makes life way easier. We've moved over to the front corner of the shop where we're going to be installing the other heater. Just like the first one, we're going to have it 48 inches off of the wall. Seems to be in tune. Just like that, we got our second heater installed. Run the wire over. Staple a whole bunch of staples, and that's be done. Since I've got a long run of this cable, what I'll do is stretch it out on the floor, make sure it's unraveled nice and flat before I try to wrestle with it 12 feet off the ground. Pull out a nice long coil and keep unraveling it. Eventually it'll straighten out. Much better. I've moved my step ladder to approximately the middle of the run. See the other heater there, front of the garage, and the second heater here. I'll start pulling wire in from the center of the run over to the heater, secure it, and then I'll pull it from the center down to the panel. Pull it over a couple more, rinse and repeat. pulled the cable through along this truss, quickly clamped it to the wall, and then ran it down along the wall and determined how long I need it with a couple feet extra. Don't want to have to be a few feet short. And now I can unwind it, get it stapled along the truss, and follow the first heater cable back to the panel.
Now that the cable for both heaters is securely in place, we can get both heaters connected.
Real simple, just 2 wires to connect, and we'll have to find the grounding spot as well. You can see there the grounding lug. That's the pass-through. Be using one of these 3/4 inch knockout clamp type connectors.
With the heaters done, let's move on to the light circuit, which poses some challenges.
This installation is a little bit odd because the main panel is at the opposite end of the run, so we have end of run light switches. On top of it, I'm going to be using outlet receptacles for each of these lights rather than just wiring them in series. In order to accomplish this, I'll be running 12 2-wire from the panel up to the first outlet in the series, and then 12 3 between each outlet. After the first receptacle, the black wire will be the hot lead leading all the way to the first light switch, and then the red wire will ultimately be feeding back and feeding each receptacle as a switched power. There's a light switch at the rear door as well as at the front door, so we'll be needing to run 12 3 NM cable between both doors and the last light receptacle. Seeing as how all of these trusses are spaced equally, I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and pre-cut my wire and then have all of the sections in hand when I'm up on top of the ladder nailing everything into place. It's really just a little bit easier than trying to wrangle this giant wire reel up on a ladder. There's exactly 8 feet between each receptacle, and then we'll want to give a little bit of extra allowance for the round of cable at each end. Through some careful guesstimation, I was able to arrive at an extra 1.5 foot of wire length per receptacle, which means we need 3 feet extra between each truss. 11 feet total for each length that we're going to cut. So you've got 11 feet, and then I'll just stretch this wire out longer tape and cut it at the end. After cutting the first length of wire, we can use it as a guide for cutting the subsequent lengths. See, I've just left about 6 or 7 inches hanging out of each box. And I'll start passing the wires through to each side. And of course, nailing them down. Here we are sometime later, about halfway through the light circuit. My dad and another good friend of mine were over the other day and were able to get a bunch of work done. We were able to run the 220 volt convenience outlets and wiring all along these walls, back wall and over to the side wall. You can see there's quite a lot of them. So now I've got the very lengthy task of running more cable to each outlet. It started in on wiring these 240 volt outlets, and I quickly realized that although I could probably maybe just squeeze all of this into one box, definitely surpassing box fill. So what I opted to do, just scooch over to the next one, set everything back 2 1/8 of an inch, and I can throw some box extenders on here, which will give me a lot more room. Bit of additional cost, but it makes things a heck of a lot easier. Now, I realize that these connectors might seem unfamiliar to a lot of people, and frankly a lot of people don't realize that you can in fact daisy chain 240 volt receptacles, of course depending on your local regulations, but as far as NFPA 70 is concerned and my local regulations, this is no problem at all, so long as everything is connected securely. Now, the traditional way to connect large conductors is usually to use something like a split bolt. Now, the reason I opted not to go with these, despite them being significantly more cost effective, you could say, is that they're very time intensive, which quickly makes the cost effectiveness not really matter as much. You also have to wrap it in 2 types of tape. There's rubber splicing tape, as well as friction tape, and then covering all of that with something like Super 33 vinyl electric tape. And this little bolt very quickly turns into a connector about that size, and it starts running into your box fill, and frankly just isn't a very nice joint. This connector style, on the other hand, is super duper easy. The brand name for them is Polaris. These are a cheaper Amazon alternative, link in the description. And it makes wiring really easy. There's already aux guard in all of the receptacles, so you don't even have to apply any corrosion inhibitors or anything like that. You simply strip your wire, place them in, tighten the connector, and you're done. All of my local big box stores were out of box extenders, so I did have to order them with the local electrical house, and they'll be in tomorrow morning, so I'll quickly do that once I get all of these connected. I like to start by taking my conductors and organizing them. Usually I pull my grounds together first. Just tuck those up out of the way. Then I start pairing up my wires. And these are 6 gauge, so
definitely might have your work cut out for you. Since I'm not usually working with 6-gauge wire, I do have to pre-slice these a bit to get my strippers to dig in properly. Not like any of my friends are always telling me, hey, you should buy new strippers. You got a lot of connections to make. Maybe I should listen to my friends. These do come with little rubber caps installed, and we will have to reinstall them on any unused terminals or on the screw heads. Just for convenience sake, I go ahead and take these all out before I start work. And then here's the magic. Making this splice is as simple as inserting, grabbing our screwdriver, tightening up that receptacle, and we can grab our other wire. Gotta wrestle them. Make sure it's inserted fully. And repeat. And that's one done. Gone ahead and put box extenders on everything. You can see how much more room we have to work with now. Pretty much all of the Polaris connectors just got shoved into the back box, and then that leaves us plenty of room in the front box to make our connections, as well as have a decent amount of wire exposed. Here's a quick look at the finished connection. Pretty slow going. I've got 2, 3 done at the moment. And I put all the box extensions on. I'll just go through and get these all wired up and be with you guys when they're all done. I've waited a really long time to do this. This lathe is sitting here in its 8,000 pounds of glory, and it's in the wrong spot. Needs to go over there. This little lathe might live there for the time being, but I might opt to move it to that corner, or perhaps the other side of the shop, or who knows. Some of my machinery, like this do-all, already on wheels. Not that I'm really happy with this, but it'll do for now, and I can very easily push on a machine and move it where I need it to go. And that's the dream. Have everything be on wheels, or at least forkliftable, and I can pick and choose where I want things, and with a little bit of effort, move it to another corner of the shop, plug it in, and run everything as normal. A lot of you probably don't know this trick, but if you've already recently wired a plug, you don't actually have to redo any of the connections. All you do is you take your new plug, you place it over the wire like so, and then you spin around once, and just like that, it's done. You can take your plug, slide it into your nice beefy outlet, make sure these guys are all on. Huzzah! Uh-oh, flash rust. That's no good. How sweet is that? Reverse. Sweet. Also, you shouldn't really run a lathe with a collet that's not clamping anything, because that can come loose. You know what? I think I've been good this year. I'll reward myself by wiring yet another plug. I couldn't resist doing the compressor while I was at it. This compressor still needs a little bit of work. It's got a slight leak, and I've also got to replace the check valve. Just on the list. Still, it runs.
This video is starting to get pretty long, so I figured I would wrap it up here. We're not really 100% done with wiring, but we're very, very close. Our single phase stuff is almost complete, and other than a few things like exterior cameras, we're really pretty much done. All of our outlets work, we have lights, we have heat, and that makes me happy. Now, next to this single phase panel, there's this guy, a separate 200 amp disconnect. This giant, beautiful disconnect is going to provide 200 amps of single phase power to our 3-phase motor, which we will then use to generate our third leg and have 3-phase power. Some of you may have already seen this giant 40 horsepower motor kicking around our shop and might have actually guessed what we're going to use it for. And those of you who are a little slower than most, well, we're building a phase converter. Right beside this disconnect, we're going to be adding another panel, a 3-phase panel, which we will be able to connect all of our large machinery to. At the moment, that's really just our big CNC lathe, but it might be some other things. 4-axis mill, maybe a 5-axis universal. Not really sure, but we're gonna have to find out in good time, and I know I want those machines, so may as well prep now. But that leaves us with a little problem. If we close up the walls, how are we gonna run power to our machines? Aha, that's where conduit comes into play. The plan is to run conduit up along the back wall and branch off of it where needed to power up these big old CNCs. But for that, you guys are gonna have to wait till our next video. And I really appreciate you all tuning in to Rocan Motor Company.